It's one of those strange facts of life you can never work out.
It's one of the great sitcoms, One Foot in the Grave, without a doubt.
I'll just lie down on the floor now and die, shall I?
Although it's called One Foot in the Grave, it's the other foot the series is about.
Morning, Mr. Muldrew.
The frightening thing for all of us is that this is going to be the most important thing we ever do.
Can you believe?
It's a combination of a marvellous script with exactly the right cast.
Will you stop that?
People who know me know it's true that I am far more like Victor than Richard Wilson is.
I don't believe it.
A normal suburban street, populated by normal suburban activities. The washing of the car, the mowing of the lawn, the swapping of the wife. But this is no Eden of quiet English pleasures. It's a branch of hell, a branch that even Barclays couldn't close down. Yes, beware all ye who enter here, for this is the home of Victor Meldrew, who arrived in this very place 10 years ago, like cellulite on Liz Hurley's thigh. Suddenly, and with devastating effect. This one-man disaster zone, this Millennium Dome in human form, is King Midas in reverse. Everything he touches turns to rust.
You'll soon be through those underpants again, I see.
I know, Jean. It's a mystery to me how he does it. Look! He'd wear out a suit of armour.
They don't seem to last 5 minutes on him, do they?
Here! You may as well use them to wipe your hands on.
Yes, thank you, ladies. I wonder if I could bring in the lady out the road walking her dog at this point. Excuse me, madam. We're asking everyone in the world what they think of Victor Meldrew's disturbing tendency to wear out a pair of Y-fronts in 10 seconds flat. Yes, the Bishop of Durham. What's your point of view on this one, sir?
One Foot in the Grave set in a very sort of sitcom land, really, isn't it? Sort of very middle class as a sofa. You know, they have windows and a nice big garden, and it's all very quiet and suburban. But the most extraordinary things do happen.
What could I possibly want with 263 bloody garden rooms in the first place?
What on earth happened?
It wasn't my fault.
You know that Victor is going to ruin your life.
Oh, I do not believe. Will you look at this?
Victor's world isn't a cartoon world. Strange, surreal things seem to happen to him and do happen to him, but then there is always a reason why they've happened.
I don't be...
It's set in suburbia, but it's not about suburbia, it's just about life.
But it has a dark edge to it. You feel that if you walked out of that street, you might fall off the world.
Mr. Meldrew, a big milk tank has just ploughed into that new lamppost outside your house. I'm afraid it's done a bit of damage.
What sort of damage? Bloody milk tanker.
Meldrew's world is the perfect illustration of the chaos theory. Somewhere on the other side of the world, a butterfly flaps its wings. And here, thousands of miles away, a lamppost comes crashing through Victor Meldrew's bedroom window. Is it bad karma? Is he suffering for his sins from an earlier life? And if so, what kind of terrible ogre was he? Genghis Khan, Vlad the Impaler, a car clamper? We may never know. What we do know began 10 years ago when he put his first foot in the grave, or at least had it lowered there by force.
Mildred, who works in the butcher's, sends you her regards and says she's sorry to hear the terrible news.
That's very nice. What terrible news?
She didn't say. She just said it wasn't worth shoving your head in a gas oven over, and you should think of it as a brand new chapter in your life.
She must have gone completely loopy. No,
Victor Meldrew started off as, in the first episode of the first series as a security guard who was replaced by a black box when he was 60, I suppose. So he had another 5 years to go as far as he was concerned.
No. Isn't it amazing what they can come up with these days? It does everything you used to do, except complain about the air conditioning.
I played Mrs. Inglis, who was Victor's boss, and I sacked him. I was responsible for Victor having one foot in the grave.
He was very upset about being made redundant. He wasn't a pensioner, he wasn't necessarily, he didn't see himself on the scrap heap.
Well, I suppose it was a forced retirement for him, wasn't it, then? He had to go and find something to do with his life and something to do with his wife as well.
So how big was it then, Mr. Meldrew?
What?
This box?
Well, I suppose it was about 12 inches wide by about... What bloody difference it make how big it was? It was a box filled with wires and microchips, and it's taken my job. I'm now officially a lower form of life than a Duracell battery.
He's always looking for work. He's always going for jobs, but never gets them. And when he tries a job, he's not very successful.
I played a man called Louis Atterbury, who was a businessman who had the misfortune, the ill-advised misfortune, to employ Victor as a chauffeur. I suppose he's like a lot of people. He's just trying to survive. He's trying to get by.
Victor, for me, is every man. He's done the right things. He's saved his money. He's worked and he's had a good marriage, and suddenly life isn't quite so good.
Still, I've had a good life. I've had a bloody awful life.
I like Victor Meldrew. I think most of the time he's a very decent man, and that's what's good. He doesn't start out as a Basil Fawlty or whatever. He's a genuinely nice man, I think. And it's just the rest of the world gets to him.
Victor is a victim, really. I mean, I chose the name with very, very specifically, Victor is a loser. There's nothing very mysterious about that. And you know, I suppose he essentially is a character with zero tolerance, you know, of the world, of the insanities around him, of all the adversity that I spend all my time trying to invent, to inflict upon him.
When people talk about Victor as the grumpiest man in Britain and all the rest of it, I deny that and say that he's not grumpy at all.
Gorgeous. The sort of day that actually makes you glad you're alive. Now get off, the lot of you. Go on, get away. This is my bloody shed. You get the bloody hell out of here.
That seems to have done the trick, doesn't it?
It's the comedy of irritation, which is the great English backbone of comedy. All of the great characters in English comedy are irritated and annoyed and complaining about the situation in which they find themselves. And it's the abuse that they give to the situation that makes it funny.
The fact that he does get grumpy means that something has happened to him. And quite a lot, of course, does happen to Victor.
Unbelievable! Do you see what I've just found in one of those crackers you bought?
No, but do, please, tell me.
Question. What's the difference between Victor Meldrew and a chef who keeps dropping his pancakes? Answer, they're both useless tossers.
I think the character is a sensitive character, and because things go wrong, that's where we see the anger and the aggression and the grumpiness. But there is always a good reason for his grumpiness.
I don't believe it!
It's ranting, really. It's English ranting. Faulty is a very great English moaner and complainer. It's irritation, which is, of course, the situation largely of living in England. You're always mildly irritated by something or another.
Look at this.
He complains a lot, of course, about the inequalities of life and about the fact that people keep throwing things into his garden and use it as a rubbish tip.
Is there any more crap you want to sling over people's gardens? This is the front lawn, not a bloody can recycling plant. Bloody least bimbos.
And there's moments where we've always wanted to say things like that, and Victor is completely unafraid of saying these things.
Well, any joy?
Yes, I think it's safe to say I've had a very good day, all told. In the morning I turned some water into wine, then I healed a few lepers, and after lunch I popped over and parted the waters of the Red Sea.
Did the man come about the roof?
No, but you can't expect miracles.
The biggest lies are builders' lies and mechanics' lies. They're bigger than anything. They always say, in fact, you know, I'll definitely have the car ready by Tuesday. So you go in on Tuesday. Oh, no, I said Thursday. You know, it's always, it's there just to frustrate and irritate you. Nobody ever says, I'm never going to fix it. You know?
Victor can complain about anything, really. I mean, life, minicab drivers, Christmas crackers, fishmongers, car park attendants, traffic jams, dead men's shoes. All these things can conspire to work up his blood pressure to boiling point.
Hello! Is that Mr. P.T. Sturgeon? Yes, well, it's about a large yucca plant your garden centre delivered to my house this morning. Yes, a young chap, I didn't catch his name. It may have been Frank Spencer. But I'll tell you exactly what the problem is, Mr. Sturgeon. I was out the back working in the garden when he arrived, so I asked him if, for the time being, he'd put it in the downstairs toilet for me. And you know what he's done? He's only planted it in the...
He upsets people a lot by shouting at them and giving them a hard time, so they do get the revenge on him in various obscure ways.
There's a bloke we can't stand any longer, always on the bleeding moan. Every time we mend his bloody Honda, he's back grousing on the phone. It's a Meldrew, it's a Meldrew, he can stick it up his bones, he can bugger off to
I think underneath it all, there's a kind of this undercurrent of desperation, in a way, of that life is hard.
Victor has lost his faith in most things twice over by now.
Mirror image of your life, really, isn't it? Car journey and a bank holiday. First 50-odd miles on the go all the way, a sense of direction, bowling along. Get past 60, everything slows down to a sudden crawl. And you realize you're not going anywhere anymore.
He genuinely gets very depressed at times, and you can see that, the frustration of it. And the darker moments of the series, I think, make it a much more interesting show.
Oh, God, I'm bloody ravenous now. I can't last a moment longer. It's no good. I'm afraid there's only one thing for it. We'll have to eat Mrs. Warboys.
Meldrew's life has been curiously devoid of outstanding achievements, with the possible exception of the world's longest-running Bad Mood, which threatens to outrun even The Mousetrap, but that's to overlook his most notable feat, that being his marriage to Margaret, which, like Christa Berg's career, mysteriously continues against all odds.
Oh, God. I wish I was dead.
I wish you were dead. I'd get some peace.
She's a perfectly normal little wifey, it seems to me. I think she is probably, well, she's certainly more tolerant than I am as a person, but then that wouldn't be difficult.
Margaret is his long-suffering wife who has to be present for a lot of the time when he's spouting off and gets very unhappy about the fact that she has to listen to a lot of this.
There were 3 Twix wrappers in the honeysuckle today. 3! Where do they all come from? The planet Twix?
Every night I have to listen to this.
By now she's so used to it. And it's part and parcel of the fabric of her life.
She is sort of wonderfully tolerant, and that wonderful capacity women have to tune out whatever's going on.
I want to burn something. They should burn the bloody Twix wrappers.
For God's sake, Victor! 15 times I've read this sentence now.
Margaret is probably the more complex one to me, because why is she still there? I don't know if she has a lot of joy.
Well, we all make mistakes from time to time.
Oh, yes. I certainly made one 35 years ago.
It's that toleration of I'm stuck with this man until he dies and I'm going to stick it through, you know, which is rather lovely and very pleasant.
She's often very frustrated and angry.
Oh, for God's sake, Victor! Will you sit down? Shut up! Turn that thing off!
And it's tempered with a kind of compassion.
They will bicker and shout at each other because really deep down it's not threatening their marriage at all.
Yeah, a lot of people ask Annette, you know, why she stays with him. No one ever asked me why I stay with her, I notice.
I could stuff a mattress with your pubic hair. What do you do? Pull it out with tweezers?
People do get to see a woman complaining about having to clean the bath and her husband's pubic hair's in it, and she could stuff a cushion with what's in there. Now that's going to ring immediate bells with so many women, and it's just part of life.
Put a spider in my flies. Look at that. There he goes, just struggling to get in through the buttonhole.
You're sure he's not struggling to get out?
There's nothing inside there that a spider wouldn't want to see.
I expect. Be at home among the cobwebs.
I mean, you don't know if Victor and Margaret still have a sex life at all. So I don't know what goes on.
429-1. Jim! How are you? No, just outside. Oh, you know, trying to bring a few wilting specimens back to life.
I suppose it's sort of fairly typical of a lot of marriages where people exist together because they don't know anything else.
She loves him. Funny thing, love. It has so many forms. I mean, we all use the word, but we all mean something different. Especially when you've got past the stage of lust. It's something very personal and very subtle and very impossible, really, to analyse. But there you are. That's the pair of them.
She has had the occasional fling, as I remember.
What was that for?
Just kissing you goodbye, Ben.
She gets the chance, but as she says, she'll stay with her husband because he cares about so much.
One of us is going to end up being cruelly rejected, and I couldn't bear that to happen.
But how can you say that? If you don't reject me, I would never reject you.
I meant one of the three of us. You talk about being sensitive. I'm afraid that's Victor's trouble. He's the most sensitive person I've ever met. And that's why I love him, and why I constantly want to ram his head through a television screen.
I've heard of several offers of flings, yeah. and some of them misunderstood, of course.
She gets quite jealous, though, doesn't she? The minute she thinks Victor's looking at anybody else, she gets quite beady.
Hello, Millicent.
Oh, so what have you come to tell me? I suppose he's denied the whole thing.
Well, of course. I mean, naturally he's going to deny it.
Naturally.
Because it never happened.
The one thing I never took you for, Margaret, was gullible. I mean, I really thought you were stronger than that.
Yes. Well, we'll see, won't we? Just how strong I am. And in future, we'll be getting our potatoes from Sainsbury's.
Einstein has explained the theory of relativity, Freud the workings of the mind, and Vorderman how to reach 592 using one number off the top and any 6 others. But to date, no scientific or mathematical genius has yet been able to explain why anyone should want to befriend Victor Meldrew. Step forward, Mrs. Warboys.
You're right. I can definitely smell it.
What do you think it is?
I don't know, but it's worse when you stand by the sideboard.
Well, don't stand by the bloody sideboard. Go home.
You know he can't smell a thing, Jean. Not since that accident up his left nostril last summer.
Oh, well, that was asking for trouble, wasn't it? You should never try and sniff a live wasp, Mr. Meldrew. It's a well-known fact.
I find Mrs. Warboys almost the funniest character sometimes because she's so enthusiastic in many ways, and she's so vulnerable and so insensitive as well.
She's a nice enough person, don't you think so? She's tactless. She's absolutely tactless. How's the travel sickness now, by the way? I haven't heard you retch since Basildon.
Mrs. Warboys is another kind of... She's not really a neighbour, although she probably lives nearby. Is another friend who is more sinned against than sinning by Victor.
What the bloody hell's this?
It's Mr. Burkitt's dog, Nippy.
Nippy? Doesn't look very nippy from where I'm standing.
She seems to have been sent on this, placed on this earth to deliberately drive Victor completely nuts in a way which is... She has no understanding at all of what he's getting worked up about.
How did it go? Did you manage to get them both?
Fine, thanks, yes. Took a bit of a while to find Margaret. She won't be needing it now. Don't think they're all that well organised in that place, if you ask me. I've known one or two people say over the years.
He thinks she's a little bit silly, and they end up at cross purposes and with crosswords many a time.
What's this? Oh, yes. She said they got almost all the beetroot out if you didn't look too closely. Myself, I can hardly see a thing.
This? I mean, this isn't my suit.
Isn't it?
Quite innocent she is about a lot of things.
You must have seen it as a mistake when you got it out.
Well, I don't know what your suit looks like, do I?
But it doesn't bloody well look like this. I mean, where do you think I shop? King Kong at C&A's?
And Victor's exasperated looks. He can't believe that human beings with the power of speech are having this conversation.
She means well. She wants to help. She manages always to do the wrong thing or be in the wrong place. I started telling him all about my dog Trixie. Stop the
car and get out!
What?
Now!
She has awful things happen to her. Ray Winston put her in a bag and rolled her down a hill.
Where she is mounted by a dog.
Someone should tell you! You're really tedious company!
Mrs. Warboys has to suffer such indignity and physical damage. Yeah.
How do these things happen?
So anything really horrible and shocking and in your worst nightmare would happen to Mrs. Warboys. It seems to be her role, in a way.
There's an old saying that you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your neighbours. A fact that my character, Patrick, and his wife, Pippa, were reminded of on a daily basis. Having Meldrew as a neighbour was like having Saddam Hussein, Jeremy Paxman and John McEnroe all rolled into one and mowing the lawn next door.
You won't come out for a meal with Mr. Meldrew tonight on principle, just because of what's happened in the past.
I would ring up and cancel, but I suppose it's a bit inconsiderate, isn't it, really? Dragging him out of his coffin in broad daylight. I wonder what bizarre aquatic species I can expect in the groin this time. Stingray up the rectum? So I'll just get off lightly with a couple of barnacles on the foreskin.
Patrick and Pippa began as Victor and Margaret's neighbours, and in fact, I think arrived back from holiday having bumped into them once before.
But who the hell are they?
I haven't the faintest idea.
Victor doesn't recognise who they are and thinks they've come to stay when they arrive back with their luggage.
It's just that I think it's time that we left you in peace. It is way past 11.
Victor! Look, just hand those back and don't be so obstinate, the pair of you.
Victor, if they want to go, perhaps they should go.
Thank you. Very much indeed.
That's how it started off, so it got off on the wrong foot, and it sort of continued in that vein.
The next few series we were next door neighbours, and Patrick fell out on numerous occasions with Victor.
And another thing, if I find one more of those bloody stupid little yellow notes, I may not be responsible for my actions.
Nice chatting with you, Mr. Meldrew.
Patrick has his role in it seems to be the person that discovers Victor at his most doing the daftest, silliest thing that he could possibly be doing.
Afternoon.
He's totally convinced, quite rightly, that he's living next door to possibly the maddest man on the planet. There's nothing that Victor could do that would in any way surprise Patrick.
Yes, I have to say, Mr. Meldrew, you certainly haven't lost your touch. And when your wife said you had a little surprise lined up for me, I'll admit one or two old favourites did spring to mind. A gift pack of your own worn underpants, a jeroboam of cat's urine, but no, for all-round staggering pointlessness, this has to take the biscuit.
Patrick thinks that Victor has in some way snubbed him or offended him or acted in an outrageous or ridiculous way, when in fact the audience know that it was a perfectly harmless act. So in many respects it's Victor who's the good guy, and Patrick who's turned into this slight ogre.
Pepper says that he's just a younger version of Victor. Most of the things that Victor's done to them, they've been accidental. They get cross with each other, so they start to plot a bit.
You're talking about us. I just caught the words arsehole think he's playing at. Quiet. I wonder what's happening.
I think Patrick sort of started off as basically someone who just was present at various moments of Victor's madness and had to react to them in various baffled ways. And then gradually over the series he sort of stood up to him a bit more and took him on.
Well, there's something you don't see every day. Someone's gone and nailed Claude Monet's painting The Water Lilies to a large post in our front garden. No, I tell a lie. Something even more beautiful. It's an estate agent's board with the word sold along the bottom.
And then we eventually sold our house, moved away, and Tim Brooke Taylor moved in.
I was the next door neighbour, and of course the great thing about the next door neighbour is that he is a threat to Victor. But in my case, the twist was Victor really liked me and my wife.
It's the new neighbours who move in next door to Victor, who come in with such high expectations, and they've heard the stories about this man who they're coming to, and can't see anything wrong with him.
You know that Victor is going to ruin your life, and sure enough, he did.
My character on the other side is the one doing awful things to Victor, but not in any deliberate way.
Morning, Mr. Meldrew!
Oh, I love Nick Swaney's character. I think he's brilliant. That awful sad with his mother next door.
There she is, look. Can't see anything.
My mother was abducted by aliens. She fishes out the window. She bangs on the ceiling when she wants something. And I'm a sort of overgrown Boy Scout who, in public, is relentlessly cheerful. But I'm sure when he's at home on his own, he gets very depressed and eats 2 packets of biscuits and a tin of custard every night.
Been quite a while since you had an upright, so your wife was saying.
Nick makes these rather innocent remarks that have a rather double entendre. I think he's the Max Miller of One Foot in the Grave.
Is it me or is it moist? I see your butt's in a sorry state at the moment then. Morning, Mr. Meldrew. Keeping your bowels open. Sorry?
I think Victor doesn't really have much time for Nick Sweeney.
I suppose it was interesting for him to have my character as a next-door neighbour, because then I could come through the fence and irritate Victor in my cheerful, sing-songy way.
Morning, Mr. Meldrew. Oh, lovely weather, I must say.
What's the idea of this?
Nick probably is a bit unhinged. The nice way of putting it would say he's thick-skinned, and or the other way of putting it, you could say he's completely psychotic.
Just as well we have sort of proper gun control in this country.
Mother, will you please sit back in that chair? I'll have it. Thank you.
I wouldn't mind, of course, being a serious piece of beefcake, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'll have to make do with being the loony neighbour from next door.
The big moment now, the lovely actress and star of all those famous tea commercials. I'm sure you'll all give her a very warm welcome as I introduce...
She was here a minute ago.
Oh dear.
Animals get us into trouble. Although, of course, we've never killed an animal. As far as I know. Margaret?
What's the matter?
Did you put a cat in our freezer?
People think we've actually stuffed a cat in the freezer and frozen it to death.
You're not going to take it out. I'm not going to leave it in there, am I? So its eyes light up every time you open the door.
It was almost a kind of pivotal moment in the first series that sort of shook a lot of reviewers up, and I suspect a lot of viewers who had hitherto thought they were watching maybe a fairly traditional and safe suburban comedy, and suddenly this rather black and quite very tasteless moment occurred.
Are you sure it's dead? Well, you think it's a pretty safe bet, wouldn't you?
I had this truly obscene letter from this man who was upset about the cat. He even went as far as to say, I know it wasn't a real cat. I presume it wasn't a real cat. But the names he called me were just extraordinary.
Well, that's Britain, isn't it? Yes, we're always far more worried about our pets than we are about our neighbours.
What on earth's that you've got on your foot? Where? You've got your foot in a rotting hedge, God!
And so there's always that kind of where you laugh and then you go, ooh, should I be laughing at this? And I think that's great. I like that.
Are you sure she's all right? You be quiet. Oh, God. What's the matter?
There's probably been more deaths in One Foot in the Grave than any other sort of popular comedy I can think of. People very rarely die in sitcoms, if at all.
She's dead. Oh, no. She can't be dead. She's a bloody health and fitness instructor.
It's almost routine and middle class, and then it goes very dark and very shocking, and you are always surprised. In fact, you know, you're on the edge of your seat because you're waiting for something quite extraordinary to happen, and you're never disappointed.
Maybe the darkness that's in there is a good counterbalance towards the absurdity of it as well.
I don't understand the phrase dark. People keep using it, but I really don't understand it. It's just part of life, isn't it? It's part of what we all live, what we all know, what we all talk about. And God knows there are many of us who laugh at funerals. I mean, that's the way it goes.
I think I just might kill myself.
Spam, baked pizza spam, that's very funny.
When you come to think about it, it's not the stuff of... You wouldn't normally call it the stuff of comedy.
It's much more like normal life. It's just that, it's just that normal life goes on, and then, in the first minute something just slightly nudges it off, and then it's nudged a bit more until suddenly the whole kind of thing tips over.
It's basic comic unpredictability, really, just trying to derail the audience slightly so they have some expectation, and then you kind of wrong foot them.
It's the great difference between American sitcom and English sitcom is you can actually have one writer write an entire series, so it's actually his viewpoint on life instead of like a committee writing every joke every week. So it's nobody's view on nobody's life.
There are things that you think, how did he get there? How did he get? And very often, when you see it all put together in the film and everything, it makes a sort of sense.
Here, boy. Come on. Here, boy.
The audience are in advance of the characters in some ways, and even when we don't know exactly what's going to happen, I mean, in One Foot in the Grave, somebody only has to put down a cup in the kitchen, and you think, oh my God, something awful is going to happen in that cup.
Stop worrying. If he was going to run away from home, I'm sure he'd have left you a note.
We've seen the dog before. We know the dog is lost. We haven't seen the dog go into Victor's house. We haven't seen him go behind the chair. But so when we just see he picks it up and does that, it looks very, very odd. But again, there is a reason, there is an explanation as to how the dog got there.
4291.
With David's writing, he's come up with a ludicrous position for Victor to find himself in, and maybe it's tracking back. How do I get him into this position?
I actually said to David Rennick, how do you think of these ideas? And he came up with the only possible answer, which was that if I knew that, I'd think of them all the time.
He's not only able to write very convoluted plots, often with sort of 5 or 6 subplots, all of which resolve in the end. But he's also on the way able to write very funny lines.
It's a combination of a marvellous script with exactly the right cast, and it's so difficult to achieve, but when you do achieve it, it looks effortless.
Obviously, I'm going to feel depressed and frustrated if I haven't managed to come up with something that amuses me, because at the end of the day, I write to amuse myself.
It looks and feels like milk running down a soft silk curtain. It just feels so smooth and as if so natural, like a waterfall, and yet it's represents hours of banging your head against the desk and trying to work out why Victor's dressed as a chicken.
See what is scrawled all over the top here? Look! Meldrew's a turd! Knock his bloody block off!
Meldrew's a turd. Meldrew, Saturday, to be collected.
The chemistry of the writer and of the actors involved, the fact that we have just sort of all clicked in a sense, and the fact that the population has sort of taken us on board, it is probable that this will never happen again.
God almighty! Look who it is. It's that actor. Who? Your man from One Foot in the Grave, the I don't believe it man.
I don't say it on demand, which people seem to think I should. And it's particularly difficult with children, for example, who say, go on, say it, and I say, no, I don't, to explain to them that you don't say it. The other sort of, most of the time, everyone does it for you anyway.
Do you know what he'd love? Oh, he'd love it if somebody came up to him and said his catchphrase.
Oh, yeah, Ted. He'd love that. I'd say no one ever does that to him. He'd think you're hilarious.
Sometimes I say, do you know, you're the first person that's done that to me? And they say, really?
I'm going to do it.
Brilliant, Ed.
Will I?
Yeah, go on.
Hold the camera.
It is strange at times that you can be in sometimes the most far distant corner of the globe, indeed. And you're walking along quite calmly, and suddenly from nowhere comes this phrase bellowing at you.
I don't believe it.
I don't get angry because I would be angry all the time. Either it's going to stop people saying it, or else it's going to increase people saying it. But at least they know now they might get punished.
Wow. Don't believe it.
You again. I don't want to see you again.
Although having I don't believe it shouted at you and all the rest of it is a little bit frustrating at times. Everyone really likes the programme.
I don't believe it.
I can't imagine that 20 years from now people won't still be watching them and laughing at them.
Of course, one will miss the fact that you are, dare one say it, a cult figure in a way. And one will get less cultish as time goes by, and that I'm going to miss that.
I think that sort of success occurs once only in a lifetime, and it's amazing that it's occurred at all. I certainly don't expect it to occur again.
Well, of course I'll miss him, but at the same time, I think it's time to say goodbye, Victor.
So, Victor Meldrew is destined to go the way of all flesh. Endless repeats on UK Gold.
But he'll leave behind him something more than just golden moments of classic comedy and a regular royalty check for the cast. He'll leave a little bit of Victor in all of us. At least that's what the BBC would have us think. As for me, I don't believe it.
I can only think of one thing worse than dying. That's living forever. I mean, can you just imagine how terrible that would actually be if I was just always here forever and ever and ever?
Yes.
They say I might as well face the truth, that I am just too long in the tooth. I started to deteriorate, and now I've passed my own sell-by date. So I'm a wrinkly, crinkly, set in my ways. It's true that my body has seen better days, but give me half a chance and I can still misbehave.